Good afternoon, and thanks for joining today's webinar with Diligent, Securing Communications Inside and Outside the Boardroom. My name is Diane Johnson, and I'm part of the marketing team at Diligent. Before we get started today, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar should last about 45 minutes. It will be recorded, and a replay will be sent out shortly after this session. Please feel free to share the replay with your colleagues. Also, you can ask questions at any time by utilizing the questions pane in the GoToWebinar panel. I'm joined today by my colleague Jeff Creasy, Senior Director of Sales at Diligent. He is responsible for Diligent's modules business. Now I'd like to hand things over to Jeff to take us through the rest of today's webinar.
Thanks, Diane. Before we jump into today's topic, I'd like to share a few words just about Diligent in general. Diligent, of course, is the worldwide leader in the board portal space, and we provide our board portal platform to over 5,000 customers and 300,000 users, and growing daily worldwide. In addition to our core boards product for helping directors and senior executives communicate and collaborate securely around board papers, we offer some complementary solutions to that product, and that's my area of ownership and expertise at the company. And those modules include a director and officer questionnaire module for completing those important processes annually, a board evaluation module for completing those all-important board assessments to help us all improve our corporate governance year over year. And then finally, our topic today, which is a secure messaging platform tightly integrated into the Diligent Boards portal to help directors and senior executives communicate more securely. So with that, I'd like to transition first of all into a first poll question to kick off our discussion and presentation today. So I'd like to understand a little more about how you're communicating with your boards of directors. Are you sending them email to their personal email address? Are you using third-party corporate email addresses, maybe an email address in your corporate system, SMS or text messaging, or just good old-fashioned phone calls? If everyone could go ahead and respond to that poll, which I think is open now, and in a few moments we'll close that out and share the results. Okay, I think we can wrap up the results, Diane. It looks like the majority of folks have mentioned that you're using a personal email address, and then we had an email address on your own corporate system, as well as third-party email addresses, and some folks still using the good old-fashioned phone. The good news, I suppose, is that you're in good company, so to speak. We see lots of folks using personal email addresses and corporate email systems still to communicate. In fact, the numbers reflected in the poll there are actually a little less than what we see in broader market data. We're actually seeing, when we look at studies that we've done with the New York Stock Exchange, polling their director population, that over 90% of directors actually admit to using personal email to communicate sensitive board data from time to time. And then we see that another 80% of those directors are using third-party corporate email systems. So in both cases, there's a severe risk for information to be left at risk. And if you look at the recent headlines, we're frankly just seeing far too many issues with communications because of the insecurity of email. You have of course the Equifax hack. You have a ransomware attack overseas that crippled systems worldwide. Closer to home, from a board standpoint, about a year ago, the former U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell, who happens to sit on the board of directors of Salesforce.com, he was caught up in one of those very large Gmail hacks that was announced, kind of concurrent with last year's election. And by virtue of that hack happening, the contents of his email inbox were made public. And unfortunately, those emails contained some very sensitive board data from Salesforce.com. In fact, a merger and acquisition presentation which listed out the details of who they were targeting and who they were not targeting. And of course, there's public companies involved here on all sides of that discussion. So it was very the type of information they nor the SEC would ever want to see the light of day, for fear it could move share prices. So obviously, that's a situation we all want to avoid, and moving to more secure communication methodology can help prevent that. Now, a number of you also mentioned that you were using corporate email systems. And although we all feel fairly confident in that on a day-to-day basis, we shouldn't get too comfortable with it because it's also risky. And there was a story, again, a little over a year ago that happened to the Barron's CEO or managing director. And they were just managing a layoff internally and trying to, send some information about who was going to be let go, what were the size of the packages going to be, et cetera. And unfortunately, because Outlook is really such a great tool, quite frankly, from an automation standpoint and a speed of work standpoint, it auto-corrected to the wrong email address. And instead of sending that sensitive communication to the right individuals, that communication about layoffs and package sizes was sent to the entire Wall Street Journal newsroom, and those were the very people that were going to be affected and impacted by that layoff. So it just goes to show that their email is just far too open a platform to trust for these kinds of sensitive communications. Now, we at Diligent Boards, of course, have thousands of customers that are using our boards platform, and you as prospects for that platform could be using competitors, you could be using old-fashioned paper, you could just be emailing documents around. But the bottom line is that in all those cases, if you're using boards, if you're emailing paper or just using paper and then communicating about that content through something like email, you're leaving yourself open to a lot of risk. There's target attacks that happen on email. There's the risk of sending it to unintended recipients. There's the risk of a director copying it and sending it on to someone else. So fundamentally, you just lose control when you're sending all this information out over the insecure world of email. Unless you think that this, is just fabricated, it's actually all too real. And this is an actual email that was inadvertently sent to Diligent. I've masked out the actual people that sent this to us to protect their anonymity. The real person here is Anderson Dye. He's a VP of sales with Diligent, and he received this email very recently from a company secretary from one of his customers. And this was this actually had attachments on it as well. It had an audit data, financials, and comments in the audit board papers, and was intended to be sent to the external auditor and someone on the board, the chairman of the audit committee, who is also named Andy. And Outlook, of course, auto-corrected to this address. And because Diligent is in this space and very close to our customers, we tend to get communications like this all the time. And I can assure you, if we're receiving them, other folks that shouldn't be receiving them are as well. So keep this in mind, that even when you're on your corporate system, you could have some risk. So what we want to do is we want to move to a more secure paradigm. We want to bring folks into the world of Diligent Boards and Diligent Messenger to close those security gaps in your communication processes. So you're going to move to Diligent Messenger and Diligent Boards, where you've got all your data secured behind that board security perimeter and all your communications secured and privatized behind the communications perimeter of Diligent Messenger. And this is going to provide you a completely secure solution that's also really easy to use, quite frankly, to help get that time-sensitive information into the right hands at the right time without any risk. We've got absolutely bulletproof security that we've been working on at Diligent for almost 2 decades now. All users are strongly authenticated. Everything is encrypted in transit and at rest. There's message lifespan settings that you can make to really control the flow of information and the retention of information. And you can even recall messages if you need to. There's always an opportunity. We're only human, and we can all make errors. And if you do, you can still recall it. So we try to solve for all those issues with Diligent Messenger. A couple other key benefits that go beyond the security that Diligent offers with Messenger. Oftentimes when I'm talking to corporate secretaries and folks in the legal profession in corporations, they focus on discovery. And Diligent really gives you the best of both worlds. If you're an organization that needs to do retention of communications for the short term or the long term, we can help you with that. We're going to have automated settings in the system that enable you to secure messages and keep them within an archive for as long as you need them per your corporate document retention standards. If you're an organization that has a more liberal policy and wants to aggressively delete communications, we can accommodate that as well. It's all handled by back-end settings on the system. You kind of set it and forget it once you come on board as a customer, and we take over from there with our systems taking ownership of that. Another thing that we find is appreciated at the director level is the operational benefits. Email is very cluttered and messy now. It's filled with spam. It's filled with stuff from our family and friends. It's filled with if you're using work email. I think we're all probably in the business of receiving hundreds, if not thousands, of emails a day, some of which go unread. So directors, especially those that may be involved in operational processes for the companies that they serve, really appreciate the focused and clean nature of Diligent Messenger. This is essentially one-stop shopping for all your board process, all your board communication needs. So instead of logging into a messy email interface that has all kinds of junk there mingled with their board papers and board information, you've got a nice clean interface organized by committees, organized by key users that you communicate with on a regular basis, only about board materials, only about board content. So a much more safe and targeted way to communicate about board matters. So finally, let's take a closer look at Diligent Messenger. We're going to transition over here into a demo in just a moment, but you're going to see an iOS application that's going to give you immediate access to all your content and groups that are part of your board's interface that you're participating in as well. It's going to have the ability to send to individual users as well as groups, and you're going to have all your different boards. Many of our users at Diligent, because we're so pervasive in the industry, serve on multiple boards. All your different boards are going to be present under one login, and you're going to be able to switch amongst those just with a single click or two. And then finally, these conversations, as we mentioned, can be saved or can be erased from servers and devices essentially as needed. So before we jump into the demo, we wanted to go to one more poll question and just ask, what do you estimate is the cost of a security breach to U.S. corporations? Is it $500,000? Is it $1 million? Is it $2.5 million, $4 million, or E, none of the above? Okay, I think almost everyone's voted, Diane, so I think we can close that out. And we apparently have a very savvy group on the phone here. The correct answer was actually none of the above, and over half of our attendees selected that. It's none of the above because it's actually higher. It's actually the average cost of a security breach, and this is data from an IBM study alongside the Ponemon Institute, which is, you can pull that up on the internet. It's a free study out there, but a very good one. The answer is the average cost of a security breach is $7 million US. So when you think about investing in something like Diligent Boards or something like Diligent Messenger, it's in some respects an insurance policy against this kind of risk, and in fact a very inexpensive insurance policy relative to this kind of risk. Which in some cases with these security breaches, you're talking about potentially the very survival of the company in many instances. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the Messenger tool. I'm going to transition over to my demo interface now, so bear with me while I switch my systems here. There we are. The first thing we're going to take a look at today is the Messenger interface on the iOS platform. And we're going to look at my my iPad today because that demo is a little more cleanly than, not cleanly I should say, but it's just a bigger screen quite frankly, so it looks it's easier for you to view it. The first thing I'm actually going to start with is my email. I mentioned that of course email is risky and we don't want to really be using it, but we know that users are going to be slow to transition off of the email paradigm since it's so pervasive in our lives. So we want to work with customers on that. So what we do Bear with me one moment. Okay, we had a bit of a technical hiccup there with some screen sharing software, so I'm going to go to a different interface. So the Messenger interface is available not only on iOS and Android, and available on any tablets associated with those operating platforms. It's also available through a web interface with all the same great features available. So the first screen you're going to see upon login, before you log into the Messenger interface, is going to be a login screen. We want to maintain very high security standards here. So naturally, you're going to have to log in every time you access the application or scan your thumbprint when you're on one of the mobile operating platforms. The web interface tends to be the de facto standard that has been adopted by our customers at the corporate level. So folks that are sitting at their desktop or their laptop computer on a daily basis are going to be interfacing from this platform to send out board papers and to go ahead and message each other when they need to. The username and password credentials are going to be identical to everything a customer would use to log into our boards platform. So it's really simple and easy, nothing new to remember there for our user population. And it always takes three pieces of information. It takes a site name, a username, and a password. So it's not something that an outside person could easily discern and go ahead and try to log in on your behalf. So let's take a look at the different screens here. We've got our conversations is going to be your initial touch point within the system, where you're going to have one-to-one communications. You're going to have some group indicators, and you're going to have some subjects as well that you can view. In addition, you're going to have the contacts database. And one of the key differences between this platform and the email world that you're living in today is the contacts list. Now, email's wide open, of course. There's no perimeter around it. As long as you have an email address for someone or they have yours, they can connect to you. Messenger, by contrast, is a closed operating environment. The only folks that are ever going to be a part of this interface are those folks that are authorized and approved by you as customers of Diligent and provided to Diligent to be implemented in the system. So you see that we have a fairly limited list of users, about a dozen or so within this system database. One of the nice things about this platform is it's very easy from any screen to initiate a communication. If I just click on a name like Carol Simon, I can go ahead and start messaging Carol by clicking her name and then typing a message down below. We're not going to send that just yet. The next screen I want to touch on is our groups screen. Now you're going to see three different color codes here. You're going to see orange, you're going to see sort of a charcoal color, and a green color. The orange color, those are going to be standing committee discussion groups. So if you have, implement Diligent Boards with us, you may also have, an audit committee, an exec committee, other standing committees within that environment that have a very predetermined membership that you would not want to extend beyond for security and privacy reasons. So we emulate that group structure here in Messenger. We bring over the membership of the audit committee and manage it on your behalf on the back end. So this becomes essentially a reply all or a group chat opportunity for all the members of the audit committee to have private conversations about audit committee matters. Same holds true for any of these other orange committees. And there's no limit on the number of committees. This is strictly based on what your implementation of Diligent Boards looks like and reflected in Messenger. The next type of group I'd like to touch on is a green group. These are groups that any user can actually create and manage to have ad hoc conversations or subjects they want to discuss with their fellow directors or executives. And I'll show you how to create those in just a moment. And then finally, the last group, these charcoal, darker colored groups, these are going to be groups that another user has created and invited this particular user to participate in. The key difference between this group and the green group is that a green group you can manage. You can delete it or add to it as you see fit. I'm going to go ahead and create a group here. So the way to do that is you click this icon. Or if you're starting from another screen, there'd be an icon right in the middle of your screen, and you can name the group. So why don't we call this the Compensation Committee? And then once you've named it, you can just add some users to it. It's going to, of course, search the database. And it's only going to search your local database. It doesn't go any outside of the perimeter of your own environment. And there you go. You have your compensation committee group. Now, one of the things that we have also done with this messaging interface is enable it to look and feel a little bit more like email. We've done things like provided a nice size messaging window. You can fit almost 3 full pages of typed text here. So if you need to send longer memos, you can do that. And you can, of course, add attachments, as you can see with the ever-present paperclip icon. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to actually add a document here. So we'll send out a resolution document. And we'll go ahead and send that. One of the things you'll notice is that there's a few features you can use here within the messaging window. You can actually see who has read the message. And this is a nice feature. We're not actually tracking how long folks are lingering on message content or if they're, reading these attachments or how long they're spending doing it. But we are indeed, giving you a way to see if folks have read it or not. So it helps if you've got important information and making sure folks are participating in that. The other thing you can do is actually recall messages. I think I mentioned this earlier. If you click this little icon here, you can click undo, and that pulls it back if whether or not someone has seen it. So it's a little more flexible than that Outlook recall feature that I think just about everybody sort of loves to hate. It never quite works as you need it to. So that about covers the interface on the web. I'm going to go ahead and try to transition back here to the iPad here. It looks like we've got that up and running. So one of the first things I want to show here is the notifications. So we do a lot of different notifications in Messenger, and you'll notice here we use iOS push notifications, which is one cue to let directors know they need to participate in the application and take a look at messages. One of the other things we do, as you'll see here, is we send an email notification. And the reason we do this, of course, is because directors are attached to their emails. In many cases, they've been using them for decades. So we want to make sure they have a very easy and obvious cue to go log into the application and participate in it without giving away any sensitive information. So this is just a generic notification. It would include a site name to indicate what company it's for, again, for our directors that serve on multiple boards, so they know who they're logging into. And then you can actually click on these links to jump right into that application. Let's take a look at diligent boards as well here. Again, I've got I apologize, there's a little bit of delay in this software right now. So this is a view of Diligent Boards, our market-leading board portal. And as you can see, there's a couple little chat bubbles here. Those are launch points for Messenger. We can also launch Messenger by opening up a side panel. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the chat icon there. And again, apologies, we're having a technical issue with that software. It's not our Messenger software, it's actually the screen sharing software that we use. So we'll try that one more time, and if we don't get this to work, we will transition over to some Q&A. Okay, there we are. And again, you can log into this application using your typical password credentials, or you can use your thumbprint. Yeah, unfortunately, this software is just not behaving, so I'm going to go ahead and let Diane open it up to some questions, and I will show a couple more features on the iOS platform if we can work through these technical issues here.
Thank you, Jeff. We do have a few questions that our attendees have asked. The first one is, what platforms are supported for the Messenger application?
Yeah, good question. Today we're supporting the iOS platform, Apple, so it works on iPads or iPhones. We're working on Android devices, smartphones or tablets, and then we also work on essentially any device through the web portal. Any internet connected device can utilize the web portal. And you can see a few additional features here. The platform, one of the nice features we actually just implemented is the ability to manage multiple boards. So the user I'm logged in as here, Gail Young, is a very prolific board member. She's used in many demos for for Diligent. So you can see all of these different boards that she's a member of, which is literally limitless. So you can actually click and just with one touch switch over to a different board. So it's a really nice way when you have directors on multiple boards to stay connected to all of them as they need to. And then you can see the different screens here, just as we did on the on the web platform. You've got your conversation screen, you have your contacts, and then you have your groups, of course. And same color codes apply, same general process applies. In both the web app and the iOS app, we're using lots of different cues to let folks know new content's available. As you can see, the counter icon here and the new message indicator with the red dot here. And this, of course, is the message we just sent with our sample resolution, which we can then open up and just view in our PDF viewer on our iPad.
Perfect. We have a second question for you.
Sure.
And that is, how long are messages saved on the platform?
That's entirely up to the customer. We work with our customers as they come on board the platform to determine what are your electronic communication retention policies, and we, essentially just match our system to mirror that. So if there's actually two settings in the system. One pertains to the actual end user interface, so how long a message lives on this interface for a user, and then there's a secondary setting that is how long does a message live in a backend archive for you, so it's accessible in the future. In either case, it's entirely up to you. We just let you dictate that, and then we match the system to enable an automated process to delete messages once they reach an expiration date, essentially. If you never want them to expire, if you want them all to be available forever, we can accommodate that as well.
Great, thank you. Another question we have, how do we add users from Messenger?
Yeah, the users are added by Diligent. We have actually a world-class and award-winning customer success team at Diligent that manages our customer base. And when we implement both Boards customers and Messenger customers, they are added through a secure process with our customer success team, and only authorized folks at a customer organization are allowed to request users be added to, again, keep that security intact, and then Diligent would do that on your behalf. It's a very quick process. It doesn't take, we have some very aggressive SLAs on that to ensure that customers aren't waiting for users to be implemented on the system.
Great, thank you. Another question we have, can I copy or print information from Messenger?
You cannot. You can copy and paste information into Messenger. So we enabled. I shouldn't say print. You can copy information into Messenger. So, for example, if you typed a memo in a Word document or typed a memo in Outlook and you wanted to bring it into Messenger, you could copy that content and paste it into the platform. But you cannot cut or copy paste information out of Messenger. We want to keep that security perimeter intact and ensure that the sanctity of the information in Messenger is intact. So there's no printing from the app and no copying or pasting out of the app.
That's great. And the last question we have, can we send an attachment on Messenger?
Yep. Yeah, as we saw earlier on the web interface, you can add a single attachment. You can add multiple attachments. In fact, there's no limit on the number of attachments. You can add attachments up to 15 megabytes on a standard basis, which actually is a nice feature. It tends to be a little more flexible than a lot of email systems that are more limited in the file size capacity companies typically allow. And in addition to that, with the multiple attachments allowed, there's no total message limit on the data there. You can send as many as you like that equal that 15 megabyte individual document size. And we've also been very flexible with that. If you are in the habit of sending large documents, large board documents, of course, we can see that with PowerPoint presentations getting pretty big. We can actually raise the limit on your behalf up to 100 megabytes. So it can accommodate very large file sizes and give you a more flexible platform for communications.
Great. That is all the questions we have.
Okay, great. Well, that is, I think, all we have, Diane, from a presentation standpoint and a demo standpoint. I apologize, we had a little technical difficulties with the iOS screen sharing option there, but we did see all the features of the platform, and I certainly hope you all will continue to consider coming on board with Diligent Boards and the Messenger platform.
Terrific. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. As I mentioned, a replay of the webinar will be sent out to you. Have a great day.